time has come for everyone to clean up their own backyard.
All right, two big stories today. The first, obviously, is the situation in Russia and Ukraine. Now, a lot of people are blaming, well, by a lot of people, I mean by saying Donald Trump supporters are blaming Joe Biden for it, taking the side of not the Ukraine, not even our own country, but Vladimir Putin. And it's all too obvious as to why they're blaming Biden for this, because they don't like Biden, blah, 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 whatever. The fact of the matter is, this is not Biden's fault. It's Vladimir Putin's fault. And I'm going to even go on a limb and say that this is Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump gave Russia a free hand, gave Vladimir Putin a free hand. And I don't mean the hand that he shook his hand with, either. This guy, Trump, believed Vladimir Putin over his own intelligence people. What does that tell you? That he was subservient to a foreign leader, a foreign dictator. Let me remind you. But as I said, I've been on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere, and everyone who hates Biden and loves Trump are making all kinds of defenses for him. Case in point, this.
Russia is currently involved in a border dispute with neighboring Ukraine. Many of Biden's closest aides are pushing the United States to get involved militarily. Now, among the many, many ironies here is that the Ukraine crisis was largely created by Joe Biden's own aides and many people like them throughout all levels of the U.S. government. So here's the Russian position. For Russia, the core question is NATO. NATO is the post-war military alliance created in 1949 to keep the Soviets from invading Western Europe, and it worked pretty well for about 40 years. But the Soviet Union has not existed in more than 3 decades. It's part of history now. And yet NATO very much lives on, better funded than ever. It is an army without a purpose. So at this point, NATO exists primarily to torment Vladimir Putin, who, whatever his many faults, has no intention of invading Western Europe. Vladimir Putin does not want Belgium. He just wants to keep his western border secure. That's why he doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO. And that makes sense. Imagine how we would feel if Mexico and Canada became satellites of China. We wouldn't like that at all. In Russia's case, this is an existential question. A NATO takeover of Ukraine would compromise Russia's access to its Sebastopol naval base. That's the site of the Russian Black Sea Fleet and one of the country's only connections to international waters. In the words of Russia scholar Richard Sakwa, if Russia lost the Sevastopol naval base, it would be, quote, the biggest military geopolitical defeat of Russia in the last 1,000 years. So for Vladimir Putin, that's unacceptable. It's a disaster. He cannot let it happen. He will not let it happen.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I had to put that out there. Tucker Carlson, the biggest doofus out there. 1, NATO was created after the Second World War. They tried to put the world back together again after the United States and our allies, Great Britain and Russia, and the rest of our allies, defeated the Axis powers. So obviously, Tucker, you don't have the slightest damn clue about what NATO is about. Secondly, NATO is not there to torment anyone, least of all the leader of another nation. Especially a nation that has already shown extreme hatred to our interests, who had one of their spokesmen as president of the United States for 4 years. You might know him. His name is Donald Trump. So for you to take the side of a dictator shows to me how un-American you really are, Tucker. And a lot of people out there who are screaming about how Joe Biden, and that's another thing I want to talk about at this point. Joe Biden is nobody's pawn. Nobody's. Now, I have my problems with Joe Biden. I'm not trying to defend him or anything. But at least he's not the one shaking the hands of a dictator who will happily attack this country if he wanted to. Because he's already had a man in office who let it happen. Now, honestly, this whole Ukraine situation needs to be resolved, obviously. If it can't be resolved by peace, they might have no choice but to fight. I don't want that to happen. No one of us want it to happen. But apparently, a lot of people out there would just let one of our allies be destroyed rather than hold up our principles as Americans. That's on people like Tucker Carlson. That's on people who support Donald Trump. That's on them. Hopefully, politics and diplomacy will win the day, and we won't have to worry about a war. Because as crazy and as insane as Vladimir Putin is, he's not going to start a world war that he knows that he will lose. Plain and simple. Now, the second story I want to talk about, obviously, by now everyone knows the verdict in the civil rights charges against the 3 people who killed Ahmaud Arbery has found the verdict, and of course, the verdict is guilty. How can it not be anything else? These people, I saw the video, you saw the video, everyone saw the video of this kid being murdered by these 3 white people. They called him everything from I'm sorry, because of YouTube rules, I can't say those words. I am not going to say them because it lowers me and it diminishes Ahmed. But they called him every racist epitaph you can think of when it comes to black people. Everything. But there's one highlight. But this morning I watched the press conference with the attorneys and, of course, Ahmed's family. And there's one section about that press conference I want to pay strict attention to. Take a listen at this.
Very thankful that you guys brought these charges of hate crime. Mm-hmm. But back on January the 31st, you guys accepted a plea deal with these 3 murderers who took my son's life. Mm-hmm. Marcus and 2 of Ahmaud's aunties stood before the courts and begged the judge not to take a plea deal that the DOJ
I heard about that.
that the DOJ went before the judge and asked them to take a plea deal with these guys.
That's a mother.
Attorney Ben Crump just called these women, just called her name, Kristen Clark.
Yes.
As I traveled to Brunswick on that Sunday afternoon, I spoke to Kristen Clark and the lead attorney, Tara Lyons, begging them to please not take this plea deal. They ignored my cry.
All right.
I begged them.
Yes, you did.
Even after the family stood before the judge and asked the judge to not take this plea deal, the lead prosecutor, Tara Lyons, stood up and asked the judge to ignore the family's cry. Justice. That's not justice for Ahmaud.
Come on. Right.
What we got today, we would have gotten today if it wasn't for the fight that the family. What the DOJ did today, they was made to do today.
Come on.
It wasn't because what they wanted to do.
Taxpayers.
They were made to do their job today.
Yes, sir.
That, of course, was Wanda Cooper Jones, Ahmaud Arbery's mother. I am so incredibly angry of the fact that this criminal justice system, the justice system that's supposed to be protecting you and me, that is supposed to ensure justice in this country, was flat out used to cover up a crime. And this was what it was done. The DOJ's job is to prosecute crimes, in this particular case, a hate crime against a citizen of this nation. If it wasn't for the political pressure from Ahmaud Arbery's family, his mother, who you just saw in that video clip, I don't think this case would have gotten to this point. It's a civil rights trial. It's a civil rights violation case. You know, I try not to be a vindictive person. Lord knows, God knows, I fall very short of that. But right now, I am calling for the resignations of every of the prosecutors she mentioned. And I'm demanding a full investigation of this. The charges could become prosecutorial misconduct if it goes that far. And more to the point, I'm petitioning the ABA, the American Bar Association, to disbar them from the practice of law for life. They have failed their oaths. Their client, and I'm not saying Ahmaud Arbery or their family was their client, although truth be told, they were. Their client was the government of the United States and the Constitution of the United States, and they failed them both. Plain and simple. If that were any other person out there, they would have been thrown out on their asses before you could say go. Plain and simple. Justice was nearly denied Ahmaud Arbery. And for what? Because he happened to be a black kid? Because he was a black kid? His skin was black? That's why you were really going to deny justice to this man, to this family, to this kid, because he was black. You went up there and you told the judge not to hear the pleas of the victim's family? You really said that. That in itself should earn you a jail sentence for prosecutorial misconduct. Your job is to stand for justice, not your white skin. So I'm calling for the ABA to disbar them. I'm calling for criminal charges against those prosecutors. We both know that's probably not going to happen, but something needs to happen. Because the minute this case hit it, they were trying to cover this up in Georgia. They were trying to cover this whole thing up. If it wasn't for the fact that the video was released, that these assholes actually crowed about it, I don't think justice would have been done. But I'm glad that justice is. And before some idiotic racist prick out there says that, oh, well, fine, justice was done, whatever. It doesn't change what we are. Yes, it does. Justice was done. I want this to stand out as a message. This idea of you killing us because you think we're going to do something because of our black skin is coming to an end. And that's for those 3 assholes who are going to spend the rest of their natural lives in prison. Now, you might get some protection from the white guards or the white Aryans, whatever racist race group that's in prison right now. You're going to become somebody's prag. And I wish that on no man in this world. But for the 3 of you, I'm going to make a special exception. You murdered a kid in cold blood, tried to lie about being in self-defense, saying that he was trying to break into a house. That excuse wasn't going to fly, especially because you had the idiotic... See, if you're going to commit a crime, don't record yourself committing said crime. Only the Nazis were stupid enough to record their war crimes, and you saw what happened to them. So, I want to thank the family of Ahmaud Arbery for keeping strong. We knew justice was coming. We just didn't think it was going to take this long. But justice finds the guilty. These 3 men are found guilty in criminal and federal court. They're going to spend the rest of their lives in prison. And whatever happens to them, happens. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left, justice to the right.